so I will call to order our first in-person meeting of the Housing and Community Development Commission since March 2020.
Yeah.
And we've got an ambitious agenda here. So I think we'll do what we can to proceed economically through it. It tends to happen since we had to cancel our meeting in July. And I think that maybe for an order of business, we should probably try to speak as loudly as we can between the large room and the transcription. I think all of these mics are on, right? So that
They
should
are.
help.
Yeah, that should help with the recording.
I will attempt to speak up.
Yeah, I suppose on the your voice carries pretty well.
A little bit, yeah.
So we'll start with the consideration of the minutes from the June 2020 meeting. Did anyone have any corrections or comments? We have to take a motion on the minutes, right? We'll need a motion for approval.
No motion.
We have a second?
Second.
I think Caleb got that. And we don't need a roll call here, right? We can just,
No.
do we have in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, let's go to.
Excuse me, I do have one question.
Yeah.
Is there a general comment period for us on the agenda? Because there's something on last month's agenda that's not on this month's agenda, and I'm just wondering why.
Do you know which item it was? We're really not supposed to discuss anything that's not on the
It's
agenda.
the American Rescue Plan Act funds.
The only reason I didn't put that one on this agenda again was because the first survey period for that closed. It was
Okay.
due August 16th. So.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, and in addition, it's there is one item on the agenda that, if depending on what we do with it or where we go with it, it would naturally tie in. That's the locally funded voucher program. That's something that if we decide to do some sort of action around that, it would probably tie with the American Rescue Plan. So it may reemerge in some ways.
Okay, thank you.
Let's go to welcome our new members first. I think, since we have our two new members here. So we have Caleb and Becky, and what I thought I'd do is give you an opportunity to introduce yourselves, and then all of us can go around the table as well. But we'll start with Caleb and Becky, and I figured name, pronouns, and maybe just a word about what brings you to HCDC.
My name is Caleb Banning. I go by the pronouns of he and his. I was brought to this commission because I have a substantial interest in affordable housing and a strong interest in the development of Charleston County.
My name is Becky Reedus, and I go to my pronouns of she and her. I am a retired from nonprofit work, 45 years if I count it all together, a long time, most of my life it feels like. In Iowa City, I was the executive director of the community for 13 years when I retired. And I've been asked to speak a little bit if there's any concerns that I may have, a conflict of interest. And I've spoken to the acting sitting attorney, I think it is. And I do not have a conflict of interest. If anybody recalls, things that I've been active in the past couple of years, it's forming a coalition to make all nonprofits providing services to individuals stronger, and I was sitting advocating for increased funding for all nonprofits. So I love the community as much as I love all the others. So I won't be swayed because of my past allegiance to community, of which there is nothing at this point. So that's me.
I'll just add for that concern, since you already funded the aid agencies, which are community crisis centers, that means she's not involved in that allocation, and you're not gonna look at those allocations for another year. So the conflict only remains a year from after you leave that organization. So hopefully by the next time you go to what, fiscal year 23 allocation.
So, yeah.
she shouldn't have a conflict, so.
Yep.
And I suppose we'll have previous members of the commission maybe say.
I'm Kyle.
This year.
Last name Vogel. He is, although I pretty much answer anything. Yeah, I've been on just about a year. I guess this is a year for me. Yeah, I'm an Iowa City West guy. I live over on the west side of town. I'm a transplant from here. My wife sucked me into the Iowa City vortex. 1999, 2000 from Kansas City where I grew up, and then we moved away for about 8 years and then moved back here 5 years ago. So I've been active in property management for 20 years in Iowa City, working with Keystone Property Management. I bought the company about 5 years ago, so that's what I do now. And yeah, I've been working with city staff on the professional side for a long time, and I felt it was a need to be part of the planning process and not just at the end of the factory output. So
my name is Nasruddin Muhammad. I'm going with my short name Nasr Muhammad. I live in Iowa City since 2013. I came here for school with my wife and my kids. I work on City Rapids as QA associate for a small firm called Simpak. Also, I am active in the Sudanese Community Center. Yeah, I'm very interested in the HCDC activities. I am advocate for the people in US.
Thanks. And I'm Matt Drabeck, pronouns he, him. And as far as community involvement, I was a founding member of the Iowa City Tenants Union a couple of years ago, active as a board member with the National Alliance on Mental Illness, the Johnson County chapter, and the Iowa City chapter of Democratic Socialists of America. And the reason I'm facilitating this meeting is because we don't have a chair at the moment. We're going to elect a chair later in the meeting. And I was the outgoing vice chair, so I've been the vice chair of HCDC over the course of the last year. And I'm entering my third and final year of HCDC. We'll go to Peter.
My name is Peter Nkumu. I am a long-time Iowa City resident. I work for Johnson County General Assistance, and I'm also the president of the Congolese community. I'm currently also representing the HCDC and the Affordable Housing Steering Committee with the City of Iowa City. And I came in the commission on a learning project, a mission. I mean, I really literally came to learn. Affordable housing is something that really interested our community, and I wanted to learn as much as I can so I can help folks in my community understand how to navigate housing around Iowa City.
Yeah, so we're all welcome here. And welcome, Caleb and Becky. I want to go next to public comment of items not on the agenda. I'm not sure, I know Steve we've got on the agenda later. Do we have any public comment? I should wait and see who's coming in if they have public comment. So our next item on the agenda is officer nominations, but unless anyone has any major objections to this, we do have at least one person coming later. Officer nominations is really ideal to have as many people as we can. It's one of the most important things we do. So I'm going to move past that and with the note that we will come back to it for the end of the meeting, though I'm looking at the next item thinking that we might have to put that one off of it too, right?
Yeah.
I think we have an essential person who's not here.
Do you have any feedback on that with Pastor Smith not being here?
Are we talking about the unsuccessful and delayed?
Right. We have an update from Little Creations, but I believe the person who's going to be providing the update hasn't arrived yet.
Okay, cool.
I would defer it until then.
Yeah, we'll come back to that. I'll make a little note here. So our next item is a discussion of locally funded voucher program. And I thought I'd start by saying a little word to provide context. I mean, we do have 2 new members of the commission, and it's been a couple of months since we were on this topic. But by way of a little background, we had a discussion in June, and there's a summary of that discussion in your packet. It's in the meeting minutes from June. But we had a discussion with Steve Rackus from the City Housing Authority over a report that we approved, essentially. And one of the items in that report was a list of basically numbers around housing choice vouchers and public housing. And one person, I believe Kyle was the person who first raised this issue, but noted that there's a large backlog in that program, and we had a discussion around how to best clear that backlog. And along the way, the idea of a local equivalent or a local version of the federal housing choice voucher program that would be funded and controlled locally, that idea came up, and Kyle, I believe, requested to have it put on the agenda for the next meeting, which was last month, which we didn't have, so now it's on the agenda for this meeting. I thought I'd give Kyle the opportunity first to say anything else by way of an introduction, but after that, this is a very, it's an open topic right now. We can take no action at all. We can write a letter to council advocating for such a program. We can write a letter to council advocating for a different program. We can do some action not listed. We also have the bylaws here, which note that we can form a subcommittee to study the issue and decide later. That's another option. So it's wide range. And Kyle, I thought I'd give you a chance to say a bit more about it, and then hopefully we can narrow down what we want to do.
As Matt mentioned, I mean, the discussion is in there, and Steve can speak on it, I'm sure, when he gives his presentation, which is Iowa City Housing Authority, gives out every amount of voucher money they get. However, we still have a backlog of hundreds of families who are on the voucher waiting list who, may never see a housing choice voucher because there simply isn't more federal funds that come in, at the drop of a hat. The reason I brought it up is for those of you who are familiar that the city is creating this fund from fee in lieu of housing from developers. There's a lot of developers that, because of the 30% AMI requirement, they're never going to be able to profit or effectively afford building projects at 30% AMI. So, I believe Next had to get a $200,000 HCGAC chunk thrown at them in order to pay off 2 of their units at 30%, in order to bring it up to 60. So the city has been collecting these funds, and I asked at a previous meeting if we as HCDC were going to be part of the discussion factor of what those funds were going to be used for. I was kind of told as of right now that wasn't in the cards for us. But I felt like it is our responsibility under the bylaws. It's the reason we were created, which is to give the city direction on where we think available funds for affordable housing, where they come from and where they go. And so as part of the discussion that Steve brought up to us, which is there is this crazy amount of families who need HCV vouchers who are never going to get off that wait list, or maybe they do 2 or 3 or 4 years down the road. What if either the funds from the fee in lieu of money that's getting put together, or taking money from the HCJ Housing Task Force budget, which kind of is almost acting as just a CDBG similar kind of fund that we fund, but to use that money for a local voucher program, something that community or what our current single source provider has been doing a great job of getting other local funds to tenants right now, with ICHA would help get into the hands of families who are on those wait lists to get into affordable housing that does exist in Iowa City right now. There are 2-bedroom units and 1-bedroom units and a handful of larger properties in a town that used to never see vacancy rates that see vacancy rates up to double digits now. You can drive down Burlington and see for rent signs left and right. You can go to any of the property management companies' websites or Facebook Marketplace and see that there are places available to rent at that 60% AMI number or even 80% AMI number, but there just aren't people with vouchers that are available to move into and rent those affordable housing. Those housing units that are affordable. So that is where I brought it up at the meeting after Steve had given his presentation, and so that is why it's on the agenda tonight. So,
I mean, I guess I have a question for you, Kyle, which is, I mean, do you see do you have a recommendation going forward? Like, how do you think there are some issues here that still need to be further studied? Are we ready to make a specific recommendation, or?
I would love. I mean, I would assume Steve was going to talk on it tonight. I mean, I would love to hear what Steve's thoughts are. I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, we're not policymakers in this room. I mean, we are. I mean, policy maybe motivators, I guess, is the best term. Yeah. So.
Should I get closer to the microphone?
Yeah, feel free to sit here.
Well, I have a question on the fund that you talked about. That's in the fund in the fee in lieu of housing from developers.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it's not being used right now. Is that what I understand? That's what I understood that you said.
The Riverfront Crossings District, people can buy out of the affordable housing requirement. I think 9 units. We have about 800,000 in the fund right now. There is a project we're potentially seeing about with the partnership with the county, but that's where the funds that were raised in the Riverfront Crossings District have to only be used in the Riverfront Crossing District. We can't use those funds outside the district. And then the funds that we generated from the Tailwinds, the fee in lieu from a TIF project, they paid us $1.8 million. We turned around and we bought 8 duplexes on the South District for the South District Affordable Homes Program. That cost us about $1.52 million. So those are the funds that we have. They don't come in. It's not like you're always going to have them year to year. So once we have that project, if we partner with the county, we're going to use all our funds at that point. So then it has to start over. So it's not we can't rely on it like, let's say we need $600 million a year. We don't know, because as the Riverfront Crossing develops, at some point we won't get as much development and we won't have that fee. And then we do have 60 to 90 units. I can't remember how much is TIF or Riverfront Crossings of on-site. So developers, for the most part, are choosing to do on-site affordable housing. Only a few choose the fee in lieu. But if you choose the fee in lieu, that's $112,000 per unit approximately that you have to pay into the fund.
Okay.
And I think only 9 units have been fee in lieu.
Okay. That helps.
In the Riverfront Crossings.
Yep.
It's different because the tax different. There's different pots of money for different things.
So, just clarification, I did not come with a presentation. Just to be, some technical guidance, if you will. Just another clarification, the issue with the waiting list is not the money, it's the number of vouchers. So we have a budget authority that we cannot exceed, but we also have a unit-based authority that we cannot exceed. So we converted 24 of our 1,215 vouchers to Cross Park Place for persons that are chronically homeless with a disabling condition. So that leaves us in the regular Housing Choice Voucher Program, 1,191 vouchers. Now, it doesn't matter that we have close to $9 million to spend this year. We can't exceed that 1,191. Well, and plus the HUD-VASH vouchers are part of that unit count, which is another 95. So the issue is not the money. The issue is we can't over-lease for 12 months. And we also have preference categories on the waiting list. And Kyle's correct. I mean, there are people in Cedar Rapids, unless they move down here or get a job down here, are never going to come to the top of the waiting list. Same thing with the remainder of Iowa and basically the remainder of the country because we have a residency preference. So within that residency preference, we have about 1,500 applicants. And we turn over about 130 vouchers a year. So that's the real reason that the waiting list has grown. It's just the length of stay over the last few years has increased. I mean, typically, we would have 66% of the program stay 5 years or less. And now that's, that number has shrunk a bit. So that is the issue, is just the number of vouchers that we have, not the money. The other issue are all the HUD regulations and how we have to, treat people on that waiting list. So again, that's just a big clarification in terms of the number of vouchers and the money. Units, budget.
I would recommend, if it's something you want to look into, then maybe committee, because this is not something, it's not one and done. You're to operate this program, you can't have somebody get assistance for a year and then boot them off if there's no funds that next year, because that creates an issue in itself. So you'd really want to look for something that, as a commission, you don't have to find that, but you have to basically say, okay, in order to run this program for 50 people or 100 individuals, we're going to need this amount of money per year, and then have that to give that to staff, the city administration, figure out, is that something we can prioritize? Is that something council wants to find every year to fund that? And about how many, even the staffing, if it's a Section 8 program, it's very highly complex, it's income certifications, it's reporting your income. If a nonprofit were to do it, maybe a nonprofit could administer it with less money, but then do you have all those rules? Do you just basically say, okay, if you qualify, we're going to give you $300 a month to take off rent? That's a much different program than adjusting it for everybody's changes in income throughout the year, for however long. So I think there's a lot of things to think about if you want to proceed with that recommendation.
Yeah, Tracy brings up a good point. It's equity versus equality. I mean, you can take every family, whether they're a family of 10 or a family of 1, and just say, you're going to get $300 a month. The Housing Choice Voucher Program is set up more for equity, in that you're taking into consideration the household composition and the household income. So you have, maybe 2 families with 4 people in there, but they all qualify for different, rents and units depending on how much income is in that household. So it's really set up that everybody is under the same guidelines and getting an equitable subsidy based on their income and family size. But the easiest thing to do would be just say, if you qualify for whatever program, we're going to give you $200, $500, or whatever. So I agree with Tracy. I mean, if you're going to have a nonprofit run it, what's that going to look like? If you're going to have the housing authority run it, I can tell you what it's going to cost. And Brianna had given me, I think, through the first round with community, there were 89 households. First round shelter house, 64 households. And second round shelter house, there was no total yet. So I took the 153, and based upon our per unit costs, which through, what month is this? August. So through July, our per unit cost per voucher is $533.46. So that 153 families would be $81,000 a month, or $82,000 a year. And then the staff,
$82,000 a year.
because you take the 81 per month, multiply it by 12.
By 153?
No, it's 153 times the per unit cost gives you 1 month. And then that's 82,000. Then you take that 82,000, multiply it 12 months.
Yeah, and that was the total?
81, no, excuse me, 12 months, $979,000. Yeah, you're right. It's close to $1 million that you would need for those 153 families. And then a housing program assistant, salary and benefits in the first year it's like 78, and then right now in the pay plan, it's going to top out at 94. So, you know, you're roughly going to need about $2 million a year to serve 153 families at that per unit cost. So that can be kind of sobering because, as Tracy mentioned, where's that revenue going to come in every year? And if you're only funding something, you know, out of the, what is it, the ARP funds, you know, sure, the city got 18 million, but how long does that last? And what do you do? If you serve a family for 5 years, what do you do when the money's gone? So.
I think we only have 4 years to spend it.
4, okay.
I'd have to verify that, but you don't get, it's a certain time frame to spend it.
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess there are a couple of aspects here. I mean, one is if the action were to write some sort of letter to the council or to do some sort of advocacy to the council, there's the question of how specific we would want to be. I mean, there's a very broad general way that would elicit really no opposition at all, which would, you know, we'd say we would write a letter or advocate for spending some amount of American Rescue funds on affordable housing of some kind. That's, you know, our broadest, most general thing that we could do. And if we did that, you know, I mean, I suspect that would be received fairly well, but it would be non-specific and it might not address the issue. Or we could zoom in very, very narrowly where we advocated for a local housing choice voucher program and we said exactly how it was going to be funded from now until the end of time. But I mean, that would require a pretty deep research project, and I don't think we're there, you know, or we could do something in between. Kind of one thing I'd like to do, especially while Steve's here, is to maybe poke at what might be the good and bad ideas. I mean, you administer what is fundamentally a two-part program. There's the housing choice voucher part and there's the public housing part. Personally, I'm more interested in the public housing part, but I think that there are legal limits to exactly how large a city's public housing program can be, and you're not that far from them, I think.
We're 13 away.
Yeah. So a law that said, or a program that expanded public housing from 80 some odd units to 8,000 some odd units just wouldn't be legal.
No. The Iowa City Housing Authority cannot exceed 99 public housing units, and that's federal law.
Well, that's going to throw up my other discussion item.
Okay. So
that's what I would prefer to do.
So let's just walk through this a little bit since I just finished this for Brianna today. So we've got the 1,191 housing choice vouchers. Then we have 95 HUD-VASH vouchers, which is for homeless veterans. We then have 78 mainstream vouchers, which is for chronically homeless with a disabling condition. We got 69 vouchers for emergency housing vouchers, which is chronically homeless or about to become homeless. And then we had the 24 that we converted at Cross Park Place. That 1,191 will get reduced because we've committed 36 of those for Cross Park Place. Well, I guess it's the different name now. 501. So we've added basically close to 160 vouchers in the last year, since March of 20. So in terms of the Housing Authority taking on any other program, right now we're at our capacity. We have 5 housing program assistants. Each one of them has a caseload of 300. So we're not really in a position to run a new program unless we hire another staff person. But then again, I'm not really interested. How do we, you know, if you have somebody for 4 years, you know, you tell them your job's going to be 4 years, and you tell the family it's going to be 4 years. So those are things to take into consideration, I think. And I agree with Tracy. It probably would be a sort of a committee to work with city staff to come up with potential options.
Yeah, and I will say from my standpoint, when you say 150, I guess I wasn't even thinking those numbers. I was thinking, what if we can help 30 more families directly? What if we can help even 50 families directly? I guess that's where I'm coming from. I mean, I guess I'm coming from what can we do within the confines of the funds that we can use? I mean, you know, like I said, that's why I brought it up. I mean, let's be honest, the funds themselves have not been the most visibly reported out. There seems to be a constant question from every source I talk to at the city as to exactly how much we have and where what can be spent and what, you know. So there's already that question. So in the end, the question just comes down to, what do we have? How can we use it for some kind of direct voucher system? And if that helps, I mean, honestly, if it helps 10 families, if we only have $50,000 and it can help 10 families for 2 years, to me that's 10 families for 2 years. That's still cheaper than going out and buying 10 units, you know, buying 10 houses to put people in. You know, and you absolutely do have landlords, private landlords and property managers in this town that do work with the Housing Choice Voucher and are happy to get $300 towards rent if that means that they can get a place rented to a family who can't quite afford $800 on their own. So that's where I'm coming from. I mean, you know, 150 would be great if we had an extra $2 million a year in budget, but I'm also just trying to figure out, maybe this is a good question for the HCDC, or for, I'm sorry, the Housing Steering Committee, which is, you know, in the Affordable Housing Distribution Model, in addition to that risk mitigation fund, you know, because I absolutely would love to see that as a priority on that side, but, you know, maybe that needs to be part of that discussion as well, which is what monies are going to be available when they start releasing from these on-term projects. You know, the fact of the matter is people are still going to keep developing in Iowa City. I mean, we are still going to see 10 more years of developers coming in, and as long as we keep it at that 30% AMI model, we are going to have people that do fee in lieu of. We're going to. Because it's not affordable for a developer. It is, especially for the cost of materials now, it's almost impossible to do 30% AMI units and still make a profit on a project. So they're going to do it. They're going to do fee in lieu of.
It's 60% for the riverfront crossings and TIPs.
So, right, some of them are, but others have had the 30% requirement as well as the 60% requirement.
Those are for LIHTC. Yep.
Okay, so.
Tax credit projects. Yeah.
But even at 60%, you're going to have some developers who just know that they can.
It's hard for new construction to hit that. Yeah.
Right. So. I see continual funds coming into the city. I see us continuing to have this money that so far the city hasn't really come to us and said, well, where is your direction on that? Which is, to me, the job of this committee as a public volunteer citizen committee is to help direct city staff and city administration as to where those monies should go. You know, we haven't been asked. We haven't been part of that conversation yet. And I thought this is a good way to become part of that conversation.
Well, and I think you bring up the AMI, that's another decision point. Because right now the Housing Choice Voucher Program is basically 50% or below.
Yeah. Public
housing's 80% or below. Home funds are 60% or below. So, is it targeting more people at 30%, or is it targeting people at 50%? Or really, I don't know where the need is. I know a few years ago we discussed adding as another preference category persons 55 and older, but we really couldn't come up with any data to support, that was a need. So there's a lot of factors that come into play.
I think Becky wants to jump in.
You can tell I keep opening my mouth even though I have one question. The Affordable Housing Steering Committee, is that the Affordable Housing Coalition, or is this different?
No, those are different things. In fact, their next agenda item, Peter is going to talk about the steering committee. But
okay, but I don't want to get started. I do have another question. I just was not sure if that was Affordable Housing Coalition.
So I believe they have a person on it.
So, my work in nonprofit, I've never been a housing expert. That was not anything that I did. There are plenty in our community, and we have somebody in the public right now that's an expert, as far as I can tell. But as far as I'm concerned. But when when nonprofit agencies were developing the Agency Impact Coalition and advocating for more funds, one of the things that we talked about a lot was bringing nonprofit sector together into the community, into the city processes to start getting their expertise. I like the idea of getting some sort of committee together to study this more, to figure out what kind of information we have, what kind of information we need, what do we need to get. But I also want to hear from our nonprofits because there's a lot of expertise in our community. We go to them when need be. I think that they'd be a valuable resource to this, a valuable partner in this, and so that I'm always going to be an advocate for bringing nonprofit voices into the discussion, and let's hear from them and partner with them to get some information.
If we were to create a subcommittee, would that be open to invite members of the public and others, or would it have to be just made of members of our committee?
I have to confess that I have never heard of this commission ever creating a subcommittee.
I haven't either, but I'm also wondering the relationship between this and the Affordable Housing Steering Committee.
Right.
The two things kind of going parallel.
Who is on the affordable housing?
Peter is on the steering
Yeah,
committee.
but and who else? And how is it? Who controls it under one entity?
Since it wasn't made as a subcommittee of us, which is weird.
Tracy controls it?
Yeah, the city council wanted to, I'm Tracy Heischen, the Neighborhood Development Services Director. I'm here, Erica Kugley's on maternity leave coming back next week, so I'm here as Erica. But the Affordable Housing Steering Committee started with the council wanting to update our Affordable Housing Action Plan. So they wanted a group, a cross-section of folks knowledgeable about housing. So there's a 12 committee member. They meet once a month. They've been meeting since February. Peter is on that committee. So is Chrissy. They could probably, I'd be hard pressed to name all 12 of them right now, but Sarah Barron's on the committee. Ryan Wade, Mark Sines,
Heath from Habitat.
Simon Andrew from the Housing Fellowship, Jessica Andino, she's on the Human Rights Committee, and the Home Builders, Melissa.
Sounds like a good section. And where are the minutes?
It's a cross section of different, and they meet once a month, and they're looking at, and Peter's going to give an update, I think, the next one, but they're looking at recommendations, and part of their work is at the end of this. There's a committee that will give recommendations for housing for people at 0 to 30%, 31 to 60, and then 60 to 100%. So they'll be working on that. They just started working on that.
And did the city council develop that committee?
City council directed staff to put that committee together, and
So it sounds like if we wanted to develop something here, that would be the recommendation we'd make is for the city council to put something together. Is that true?
They could, but I don't know if they put another affordable housing committee. I've staffed HCDC for, I've been at city 20 years, and there has been times that the commission has had like a working group, like a smaller, that's not a quorum. And if they've asked other members to give input, they have. They just can't have a quorum, so you can't have 5 of you. So like if 2 or 3 of you want to start a subgroup and you want some input from other folks, you can do that. That's not a problem.
And we can do that either formally or informally. Yeah. I mean, we can officially create a subcommittee by vote, or 2 people can come together and flesh out an idea and put it on the agenda. Those are
as I recall,
possibilities.
Subcommittees have reviewed the scoring criteria over time.
I mean, HCDC has formed subcommittees for various things throughout the years. Yeah, you just can't have quorum.
Right. So I mean, I guess well, while you're here, Stephen, on the question, there has been and now this isn't public housing. There's another forum where there's been discussion of the city purchasing, typically in the context of manufactured home parks, but it could be done in principle anywhere, and turning it over to, say, a resident co-op or something like that. That is also a possibility, is it not?
Yeah, I think the Affordable Housing Coalition Didn't they form a committee that explored that very thing?
That I don't know. And there's, yes, if the political and the council tells us to do it, we'll do it. If that's the question.
Yeah, I think they have.
Or we will find the staff, or council appropriates additional money for staff. If the political will is there and that's what they vote for, then we accommodate what their desire, or what they vote and approve.
Yeah, I think, because I remember Tracy Mulcahy, the assistant city manager in North Liberty, was part of that subcommittee with the Affordable Housing Coalition when we were talking about creating this task force, if you will. And I believe that trailer park in North Liberty was sold for like $12 million. But one of the things Tracy said was for the city of North Liberty to put the infrastructure in, that probably would have cost them like another $24 million or something to that, something. It was a large amount of money in order to get that up to city code if they in fact purchased it. But that was discussed, and I think Steve Gordon and some other people were on. That would be a Sarah Barron question. I'm not exactly sure where that all ended up.
If the question is, can the city buy housing but not put in our public housing?
Right.
Yes, we can do that.
Because you do that with the university program now, right? Those aren't going into your public housing numbers.
No. We
Right.
buy those, renovate it, and then we sell it.
Right.
Same with South District program.
Right.
We buy, renovate it, and we sell it to income-eligible households.
Mm-hmm.
Another way you can do that if it's not the city is like any affordable housing provider that's a nonprofit. When you allocate money to them, that's almost permanent affordable housing because they have their mission is affordable housing. So as long as you're allocating money to those types of organizations, we consider that almost permanent affordable housing.
I mean, my sense is that kind of the where we are, if we wanted to do something on the broader end, if we wanted to just advocate money for affordable housing, even with a bit narrower focus than that, affordable housing in a particular direction, we seem to be well positioned to do that. I mean, we could write a letter on that this week or next week, but I don't feel as though we're ready to zoom in on a specific program if we wanted to go that route.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like there's more work that would need to be done before we did that. So if we wanted some people to get together to study local housing choice vouchers versus some other idea, it feels to me like we could do that, but we would need to put together a group to work on it rather than advocate for it now. That's just my impression, though. I also want to give everybody else an opportunity to jump in.
So here's a question: a task force like that, if it's 2 or 3 of us, is that something that we can invite, like the Sarah Cohn, Sarah Barron? Thank you.
I mean, if a couple of people get together and work on something, you can invite whoever you want.
I
mean, you can invite city council if you want to. I mean, it's there's no regulation.
Well, not all of them.
Not at all. But yeah, I mean, in principle, you can invite anyone. I mean,
It would be nice to have, because there's different groups all pursuing kind of the same things right now. So the Affordable Housing Steering Committee hopes to have their recommendations to council this fall. And those type of recommendations that you make, like housing recommendations for 0 to 30%, 31 to 60%, whatever, that'd be nice to have so that the Affordable Housing Steering Committee can get some of your recommendations. And so when they're making that recommendations to council,
So
that's more than one voice.
Can I ask real quick? I find HCDC's role in this as somewhat a slap in the face that this Affordable Housing Steering Committee was put together. And even on their list of items is oversight on us. And they're basically doing the role for which ACDC was created and commissioned in the first place. It seems weird that it's an end around this group of people who have volunteered their time and, accepted a commission to sit on this commission, that the Affordable Housing Task Force is seemingly taking much of our roles away and doing an end around from this commission to report directly to the city.
so if it's okay, Carl, I think if it's all right with you, I'd like to move that.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's fine.
Item 8, because I think I'm probably going to agree with you and take a fight along the way on that. But I feel like we should wait for the discussion of the
That's fine.
steering committee. I do want to give anyone who hasn't spoken yet an opportunity to jump in.
Yeah, I do have a question for Steve. As a general guidance about this proposal that we are going to enact, how many vouchers you are going to propose? Or it's too early to say?
I would say it's too early to say. I mean, I took a look at, the community and shelter house, the number of people served. Kyle's brought up, several different numbers. I think that's all part of the discussion, is like how much money's available and, what can that serve? How many, if the money's available for 4 years, how many families can we back into that 4 years? If another nonprofit is going to run the program for the city or whatever, what's the admin cost going to be? So I think, I think the number of people you want to serve is going to be dependent upon how much money can actually be brought to bear on it. And, what other recommendations are there for, the various groups? Like maybe, how high are they going on AMI?
For what?
For the Affordable Housing Steering Committee?
Oh, they're 100%.
100%. So yeah, at the upper end, there might be some home ownership recommendations, where at the lower end, it's some kind of rental assistance or utility assistance or something that's helping that family with their bottom line.
Also, who's going to run this project? Is it non-profit organization?
Sorry, what was the question?
Who's going to run this proposal?
We don't know. Are you talking about if council wants to fund something, or if you make a recommendation for something, that would have to be determined.
So we are going to include that on our proposal, correct?
Well, I think that if we were going to make a proposal, that's one of the questions we'd have to decide. Do we want to advocate that any particular group run it, or do we want to leave it open? And I think that's one of the issues we still need to work out. So probably be one reason to put together a work group of some kind. Because I mean, there are a lot of different ways in potential that it could be run.
And I think it's just the recommendation that, if this committee recommends they want to have some type of ongoing rental subsidy program, you'd say that what the intent was, and then it'd be up to council and administration to figure out how that can best work. Is it the city hiring staff? Is it the city procuring a nonprofit to do it? So I think your recommendation would just be this is what you would like to see, this is the level that you'd like to see it to, and then staff and council figure out the details.
I think the other thing to consider is, how are you going to reach out for applicants? I mean, who's the target audience? That's another big thing. And how are you going to bring them in and let them know this program is available? It's not necessarily people coming off our waiting list, because there's some HUD regulations and people have applied to our waiting list to get a voucher off of that waiting list, and I don't know that we can take people off that waiting list if there's not a guarantee that at some point we have the capacity to convert them to a regular voucher, whether that's a housing choice voucher, mainstream, emergency, or whatever. But again, we're just how many EHVs? I forgot how many we've already got emergency housing vouchers that are leasing up. Our mainstream, we have 78 of those. We're now up to 45 that are leased up, and that's a very difficult population when you're talking about chronically homeless with a disabling condition. And our VASH numbers are somewhat down a little bit because of the VA's capacity to make referrals. So again, we've got some emerging opportunities with Shelter House and the VA that we're not completely 100% tapped into yet.
And I'm okay with us not making a recommendation. I absolutely don't think we're in a position to know exactly what we want. More importantly, I was hoping that this would at least get some kind of conversation going I would happily sit down with a couple members, either, once a month in the next couple months, or every couple weeks for the next couple months, and sit down and really try to, I don't know, thought board, promise board, hope board, throw some things to the wall and see what we think might be. I mean, as you said, Tracy pointed out, as a committee, all we can do is whisper in the ear of city council and say, hey, can you have Brianna look at this? That's what we're doing with our recommendations. So if we can get 2 or 3 things down and just say, we would like a regular report from the city as to what kind of funds they see coming available from these other sources we've not had in the past. And here are the 3 things that we feel those funds could be most efficiently used for. Can you have staff look into how to make that work and what they think I think that would be the goal.
Yeah, this is, it seems like a good idea, and if you want to put a couple of people together to talk about it and work out a little bit of it, then you'd be able to decide where to go next. You could always circulate a letter, or if you think it's something that would benefit from official HCDC endorsement, then we could go that route too. Hey, Megan. Do we have any other input on item 7?
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks for correcting me.
Thank you, Steve.
Is that cheap?
Yeah. Well, I forgot I had my reader, so I was kind of All right. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
So I think I'll pause here and loop back around and get some of the items we missed. So we have.
Do you want Megan to introduce herself to the new people since she got to this far?
Yeah. Megan, why don't you introduce yourself with name, pronoun, and a brief word about yourself for our new members.
Sure. Hi there, welcome. I'm really glad to say hello. My name is Megan Alter. I'm a commissioner. I'm fortunate enough to start my 2nd term along with you guys.
Oh yeah, I forgot you technically are a new commissioner.
Yeah.
New returning.
The new old.
New old.
So I'm going to loop back to officer nominations. So as I'm sure you know, this commission has a chair and a vice chair. We currently have neither of those things right now. So one of our tasks here is to elect a chair and a vice chair. I am merely our outgoing vice chair. Do we have any, I know that we take a vote, and I believe it's a roll call vote in public, but is there any special process I need to make sure I'm not missing?
I don't think so. I think they just take nominations and then.
I don't want to do the vice chair first and then just have it all be overthrown and anything like that. Okay, good. And I believe nominations are totally open. Anyone in this room can nominate, not you, but
yep.
Commissioners can nominate any other commissioner, including themselves.
I think so. Okay.
All right. So we'll start with the role of vice chair. Do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I'll nominate Matt. You.
I was going to nominate myself.
I nominate Megan.
So we have a nomination of me, and we have a nomination of Megan.
Are we doing it one seat at a time? Or are we also
I had
entertaining?
planned to do vice chair followed by chair.
Okay.
You can do either. I've seen it. I've seen people nominate both at once, and I've seen separate. So it doesn't. It's however you want to proceed.
Let's do a single file. Do we have any additional nominations?
Well, I guess I would ask if anybody has an interest, a burning need to have it on their resume, and or just the pride of knowing you get to talk the most at meetings, or the second most when the first most is gone. Does anybody have that burning need?
Well, the vice chair does not talk the most at meetings. This is very much
unless the chair's gone.
The vice chair talks or facilitates meetings only when the chair is,
Right.
is absent.
Right.
And our chair is currently, off the commission and a member of planning and zoning.
Yeah.
So here I am.
I mean, I would argue that you two, I think, have the longest, correct?
Yes,
You guys are the two
I am
longest
entering my
serving
third year,
currently.
Egan is entering her fourth.
Right. So,
And Peter.
I'm happy with either one of you filling either role or anybody else filling either role, to be honest. But
Do we need to set?
Can people turn down nominations?
I suppose so, yeah.
All right, I'd like to decline.
Okay.
I move that we close nominations then.
Matt, I'd actually like to nominate you for chair. You've been a vice chair, and I think it's time for you
I
to
did
move up.
nominate him for chair.
Oh, I thought you said vice.
Oh, I thought you nominated me
No,
for
I
vice
nominate.
chair.
No, I nominated him for chair. So.
Oh, well,
It's time for you to move up.
Yeah, I think so too. I believe in secession. So.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that, but I feel like I shouldn't overturn my previously set procedure and then be elected chair. I mean, then I would be stealing the election. So we'll go vice chair first, and Megan is the only nominee, unless.
I move that we close nominations. Somebody give me a second.
Second.
So we're roll calling this.
It's like our own vice
So
chair,
I'll start
too.
with Peter.
What are we doing?
I suppose you're voting yes or no on Megan, since Megan
It's
is
the
the only
resolution for
nominee.
Megan being vice chair, right?
I support Megan.
Caleb,
I support.
Becky.
What am I? I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
You're voting on vice chair, Megan.
Megan, I support.
Kyle.
Yeah.
Megan.
Yes.
Nader.
Yes, I support.
So Megan is our vice chair. Woo! And do we have any nominations for chair? We'll if you'd like to nominate again.
I nominate you. I'm sorry, I thought we were nominating chair before. That was my nomination for you to be chair.
I'll second that nomination.
Do we
Still-
have
still
any other
second.
nominations?
I'm good.
Yeah, burned my resume, so.
All right.
One-
Well,
Unless Caleb is planning a coup right
Yeah.
now.
Can I-
Back
can I
his
make
mind,
one-
he's ready.
One
love to
comment. One comment is that it's not necessarily that it has to follow in succession. However, there's a
Yeah.
lot of sense to it, right?
yeah, it
so
is purely chosen tradition. Any person in the room is
I mean-
eligible for the chair role.
there was a time earlier in my first tenure where that wasn't the case. They switched over to new people altogether. So just sort of like for future reference, that's always a possibility as well.
Yeah.
That said, I also heartily support you becoming chair.
We've had kind of a convention of someone in their second year becoming vice chair, someone in their third year chair, but we never have to do that. A first year person could become chair. That is allowed.
Oh, we're watching the both of you this year. We'll let you know. Regime change has to happen. I mean,
I'll start with Peter. We're voting on me for chair.
yes.
I'm voting for you as a chair.
Caleb.
I support Matt.
Matt, yep.
Yep.
Kyle.
Yes.
Megan.
Yes.
Nader. And I will vote for myself as well.
Congratulations.
So I do not have to turn over the facilitator role. That would be a scary part of being chair your first year. This would be the point where you would have to now become the facilitator.
Jump in.
Yeah, no way.
I would have been kind of scared to facilitate my first meeting of HCDC. So I believe we've got the unsuccessful and delayed projects update. I believe we don't have Pastor Smith either in person or on
Right.
video, right?
That's true. Should I follow up either with a written update or we can postpone? Is that acceptable? It's almost to the point where it's pressing.
It'll be pressing, really, there's nothing you can, if you were to recapture funding right now, nothing would happen. But when you get those August 30th applications, and we don't know who's going to apply, we don't know how much they're going to apply for, that's when you need to make a decision. That's when you decide if it's not gonna proceed and you have these applications that we can fund right now, is if you're gonna recapture that and reallocate it. You also have the second opportunity in December. You'll be having your regular CDBG round where applications will be due. Our concern is just timeliness. After a year, we start getting, especially for a CDBG public facility project, if it's sat there for a year and they have not bid it, we have a lot of red flags as staff going off. And so we need to get that to a project that someone can spend the money now and proceed.
Well, just so it's on the record, so in case he listens to this or gets a note, I will say, I mean, I was one of the commissioners who pushed for that extension of time with the understanding he was going to meet with Rhiannon and staff and learn how to get online and get that. But we are at the point that we're 3 months, 4 months, whatever it's been long. And if no more activities coming by, at this point, work should have been completed. And I am of the opinion that if that doesn't happen by August 30th, I mean, I will be in support of using those funds for a new applicant who is willing to use those funds as intended.
Can I ask a question? Did New Creation provide an update? Is there anything since what I read in the packet of information?
Since then, no. The last items that unfolded were when I talked to him most recently, he was working on bidding out the project. There were some concerns of increased construction costs, but there is no construction contract to date and no funds have been drawn. So this project was FY21, so we're a year past when this would have been underway.
Well, I also read that he didn't have a DUNS number. Did that get settled?
That did. That got settled after our last meeting.
Okay.
And we were supposed to revisit this earlier, but there were some changes in the summer HCDC schedule. So.
And at that meeting, I was under the impression from his presentation at that meeting that was the only thing holding him up, that he had people ready to begin work. And so the fact that you did work with him to get that DUNS number, but yet here it's been how many months now? Yeah. And the fact that it hasn't even gotten bid out is worrisome to me.
Does the project need to get bid out? Does he need multiple bids because it's under 100,000?
Yes, to follow federal procurement standards, yes.
I did read, though, that he already had a contract. Did that mean that he had bid the project out and gotten multiple bids on it?
He bid once. Technically, it's went out twice already. He bid once, and there was the wrong Davis-Bacon wage requirements in the packet, so it had to be bid again. And then there were concerns of, I haven't seen the bids. Typically when we do a bidding process, I'll turn in a bid tabulation, and that has not been submitted to me. So I haven't seen that yet, but he had called and asked about potentially rebidding or changing the scope of work because of increased construction costs, but there has not been a third bid or a construction contract or anything.
Okay.
There's no immediate burning fire if we do this next month.
No, because when we come to you in September we'll have the applications that we received through your mid-year funding round. At that point, you can basically say, okay, you're going to see all the other applications, and if you need those funds, you can fully fund. You can make that decision then.
So will notification essentially to Pastor Smith about your own timeline is shrinking fast? Is there going to be a specific, explicit communication with him, or will he learn it by way of this meeting?
I think it's up to you guys what you're wanting to see, but just given the short window to the next meeting, I guess having clear expectations on what you're expecting.
I think it would be good to communicate with him to let him know, so that just transparency and it's all above board, as opposed to like, well, here's the meeting. We talked about it. I think a communication would be good.
I think I'd like to have I'd like to know, does he have a contractor hired? Does he have the bid out? Or give him a date, and if not, then we'll pull the funds back. I think we need some really hard, I'm supporting what you're saying, Megan.
Which I think is why he was invited to come tonight to present. And he did not make it.
So I agree.
Because I'm not in favor of coming back next month, reviewing applications and saying I'd rather take that money and do this, because he may have started with somebody.
We can give clear direction. We can send him a letter, and Brianna will communicate with them, basically saying, you have a month to get these things secured. If it's not done within a month, then we may reallocate the funds. I mean, we could give that direction.
Can we give them the direction of, by the time the
Yeah,
packet
how
comes
strong
out so that
do you
we
want
have
them to
clear
know?
understanding? I'd like it so that by the time the packet goes out to us, that we have clear understanding of where we are with it. I don't want to come to a meeting with Pastor Smith and applications, and I can see that not being very good. So that's what I would like, is prior to whenever, Brianna, you'll send it a week ahead of time.
Yeah,
So he essentially would have about 3 weeks.
Are you looking for a construction contract to be in place, or are you looking at funds to be drawn kind of thing? Just looking at a realistic timeline?
Well, I read everything pretty carefully a number of times, and it looked to me, I've been there, done this. I mean, I could share my story for my very first project too, but you learn really quickly and you get it together. And so he should, based on what I read, he did have a contractor. So I'd like to see at least construction started by a certain time. That would be my proposal. Because if he's got somebody started, hired, he should be able to get everything started. I mean, this has been, what, a couple of months since the June meeting, right? So this has been quite a while.
Was it June or earlier than that?
I think it was earlier than that.
It was
I think
earlier than that.
Okay.
2 meetings canceled, yeah.
Yeah. I want to say it was the March meeting.
Yeah, the March meeting was where
Yeah.
it was the last
Yeah.
contact point.
I mean, it's been 5 months since
Yeah.
the DUN, DNI number, whatever, since that was the
issue.
only issue on the table, and he just couldn't get logged in, and Brianna had said, you come to me next week and we will put it in and we'll get it figured out. And you did report back to us that he had
Yeah.
gotten the number within the day or so, like it
Yeah,
was within right
the
away.
week. Right.
But yeah, I mean, that was 5 months ago that, yeah. I mean,
This
Bob the
is-
handyman could have drove up in his van and got it done by now, so, yeah.
This
For those
is
of
their
you who don't know
second
about it.
project too, not to beat a dead horse, but
Right.
So, I mean, it seems like from the discussion, the sentiment from the commission seems to be a stronger worded letter. It seems like there would be a fair bit of support for pulling funds back, where people just simply have to make a decision right now. That's the vibe I'm getting from the
Yep.
room.
okay.
Is there a reason why he didn't show up today?
I'm not for sure. When we talked last, he said he should be able to come, and I just said, hey, if he can't come, please give us a written update so we at least have something to give the commission, but I haven't heard anything.
Yeah, I stick with my, the next meeting's, is it September 16th? Is that the next
Yeah.
Yes.
meeting? So that would mean we'd be looking at maybe by the 9th? Somewhere around there. So he doesn't have a lot of time, but, and I'm not trying, I mean, I think the project is a great one, the daycare is really needed, so I like the project a lot, but it just sounds like he's had a lot of time, the project has had a lot of time, so I would really say a couple of weeks is, I think, what they have to get it together and get it started.
Yeah.
However, the city staff is going to figure out how you're going to monitor that. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
If we were to pull the funds back, does he have an opportunity to apply again?
I think he could, like you were saying.
Yeah, your fiscal year 23 round comes up in December, applications due in January, so yeah, there'd be another round to apply pretty soon.
Sounds like you need more time to put this project together, so maybe that might be an option for him.
Yeah, I know he's had some family, personal stuff going on too, so.
Yeah, how we can hear from him? We need to give him chance until the next meeting, or should email us?
Sounded like maybe a week before the next meeting, the 9th. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, I support that, yeah. Becky's recommendation that he needs to have construction started, contractors on site doing work by September 9th in order for us not to release funds at the next meeting. I mean, I could second that recommendation.
Does that work?
Could you vote on that?
Probably should have just for good measure.
Probably should take a motion and vote on that.
I'll second.
So we said construction contract in place by the next meeting or by the next?
By September 9th.
Okay.
That way you can put it in the packet that work has been started by the time we get the packet to the 16th.
Okay.
Kyle, are you moving?
I was seconding Becky's
Oh.
recommendation,
Yeah.
but we got a second to my second, so
Yeah.
that's good.
Right, in favor? Say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Aye. We have unanimous in favor.
Okay. So my goal will be to put the letter in the follow-up in the packet for you for September.
Along with an invitation to provide the update, I suppose, so that'll
Okay.
that'll be an agenda item. We'll move on to number 8, discussion of the Affordable Housing Steering Committee recommendations. A bit of a background as you heard, Peter is on the Affordable Housing Steering Committee, was giving us an update last month, but there were Zoom difficulties, and you have in your packet that update. And Peter, I thought I'd give you a chance to say a word about it if you'd like, and we can have a discussion.
I think I share the comments that came out of the Affordable Housing Steering Committee regarding the HCDC. And as a member of the HCDC, I don't think I really wanted to involve myself in that discussion. I wanted to bring it up here so we can all dissect it and see how we can respond, because I know they are waiting for our response from what they made. And again, these are recommendations. It's their opinion, it's our opinion. I'm not going to say put myself in there, even though I didn't really take part into making this comment, but.
Would you, is the expectation for a kind of official formal response, or we just kind of have a discussion and then maybe give you some things to
Maybe Tracy can help me.
Okay.
What do you think?
The Affordable Housing, the steering committee looked at all affordable housing policies and funds that the city had. So it wasn't just HCDC, it was like South District program, it was the security deposit, it was every riverfront crossings. And so there is a subcommittee from that group that chose to look at the policies more in depth after staff went through each one. And this committee looked at certain things, and there's 3 things that they wanted. They basically did provide a lot of comment about the other policies, but they did comment on the affordable housing location model. They commented on just the way recommendations for housing was made, and then the affordable housing distribution model. So those are the 3 things that the Affordable Housing Steering Committee, that subgroup commented on.
Tracy, excuse me, what was the first one?
The affordable housing location model. They
Location?
recommend- Huh?
The affordable housing
Location model?
locate, okay.
Yeah. So those are the 3 things out of all the different affordable housing programs and policies that the city had that they wanted to make a recommendation on. That goes back to the larger committee, because this was only a smaller subcommittee that made these recommendations. The larger committee won't look at it before they make any type of recommendation to council. But when they saw that some of the recommendations related to the Housing Community Development Commission, they wanted your input about their comments so that they can take that back to the larger group. And then the larger group can either say, we'll tweak it, we'll delete it, we'll add it, whatever. But they wanted some type of input from the Housing Community Development Commission.
Peter, is there anything else you wanted to highlight? Or?
I don't know if everyone has the report that I sent. Maybe you have it.
Was this all in the packet?
Yes. Yeah, it's
The Affordable Housing Steering Committee update?
Yeah.
The number 8?
It's in the number 8, yeah.
You want me to read it, or?
You don't have to read it, I just didn't know if
Okay.
you had it in front of you.
Yeah,
If it was helpful.
Yeah. And are we just having some general discussion about how we feel about some of these items?
Well, we need to give some form of feedback.
Direction
because,
back.
some of these recommendations will go to the city council, and they would like input from us
Right.
before they send off recommendations to affect us.
The first one, I have no problem with at all. I don't think the current affordable housing location model, I just don't think it works. I don't like the way it's currently trying to be directed to that new south side development. I don't think it works with code-based zoning the way that, I just don't think it worked. I've brought up some issues I have with the fact that, that we do affordable housing everywhere else except these areas. I just think it's bad. Either affordable housing is important for everybody everywhere in Iowa City, or someone at the city level is getting to pick and choose where affordable housing happens. And I just don't like it. So I'm fine with the first one. There's got to be better ways. I don't know what they are. It's got to be. The HCDC thing really rubbed me wrong. First off, to restructure the process to prioritize staff recommendation and scores. The first part, commission's review and ranking should be based on objective and established criteria, priorities, and data, and staff scores should be included. I don't have a problem with staff scores being included. I also don't feel that there's ever a way, I feel that we already use very well-established criteria, priorities, and data in our scoring system, but there is absolutely no way to make them completely objective. You're always going to have subjective opinions on what a score is based on, upon variables for projects that are drastically different from each other.
Well, to that point, there is a way to make it completely objective. It would be to have a rubric that you follow mindlessly.
Right.
The problem is that if I come up with a way to make it completely objective, where there is simply no question, we would produce worse decisions. In the past, we've always had we've had rubrics since I've joined the commission. I think we actually did not have a rubric a couple of years prior. But we've had a rubric since I've joined the commission, and we have followed it. We've seen staff scores at times, and the scores have been very, very valuable. But then sometimes additional information has come up, additional priorities. We've modified those scores here and there, and as a result, we've made better decisions than we would have had we just straight followed the rubric.
Right.
So I'm not convinced that making things significantly more objective than they are now would be better.
And
I also have it, of course, I guess my other core is the whole prioritizing staff recommendations. What is the purpose of having a community-driven committee like ourselves if staff recommendations are always going to be the weighted scale? I have no offense to staff. I think they do an incredible job, and generally 98% of the time, whether it's not just our committee, but committees across the board, generally direct towards what staff recommends. Why? Because of the professionals that put the data together for us. Generally it makes sense. But it is the closed closet roving versus, it's those kind of discussions as a community that understands where we're coming from and representing like-minded members of our community that makes a difference. If we're just prioritizing staff and we're prioritizing their scores, we shouldn't even have any input. At that point, why does it matter what we say? And I just have a real problem with the wording, I guess, of this focus of the housing task force, that somehow, we're not doing a good job in their eyes, that I guess maybe somebody feels that we don't go along with staff enough. I really don't even understand where this recommendation came from. But Megan, yeah, sorry.
Actually, to dovetail off of that, I'm curious about sort of where these impressions came from. Because actually, with these being open meetings and recorded, a lot of very authentic discussion, including some doubts and wonder within the commission about the rubric and about how we're applying it, all of that is public, and I think that that's important for transparency, so that it is, this is a difficult process, and it appears at times messy, and I wonder if, in fact, some of the register from the steering committee was based on like actually hearing or seeing notes, because we're unique among commissions in that we're like verbatim. Our notes are all the way through as opposed to just summary. And I'm wondering if that transcription or what have you has kind of colored some of the impressions so that it appears that we're more wishy-washy and don't know what we're doing than in fact our scores have. I mean, we've had robust conversations. I believe ultimately there have been people who said, oh, this is my pet project, or this is what I really believed in, but then actually, as other voices come in, say, let's look at how this shakes out within the rubric and with priorities. We get input from staff about sort of the potential stability of the ask in terms of some of the more complex grants. So I think, to Matt's point, we have to balance all of that, but I'm wondering if sometimes that discussion might have actually indicated a confusion rather than the messiness of the process. Again, that's speculation, but I wholeheartedly agree that we take a lot of direction from the work that professionals do, but we also have a rubric to follow, and it is not a checklist, and that's why we have the opportunity to be able to talk about this, as messy and honestly as difficult as it is, especially knowing it has been likened to me by a couple of different executive directors that this is like talking about your children, right? And saying, well, which child doesn't? It's a very difficult, painful process, and that can be messy. But I wonder if it also has then led through comments just to make it sound like it's more like that we don't know what we're doing, and I don't think that's the case. So,
Peter, did you feel like there was this discussion was being pushed by any particular group or any particular members of the?
You know, I don't think I want to say.
No, say.
No.
I actually don't want to know that, because I don't think it has a bearing.
What I can say
is,
is,
the group in total came out with
Right.
If this was a finding, then that was what
recommendation,
this
Yeah, I mean,
committee
we
thought.
treat the recommendations as written regardless of source.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think it's important to mention the source or anything like that. But
You get some next one.
what I like to say is that some of the people that we have in our committee are people that come to our meetings, and they know what we do. I'm sure definitely not everything that they made a comment is necessarily I don't want to say true, but they are aware of what the kind of job we do and what kind of people we have in our community. So in a sense, I feel like we need to look at in both ways. I mean, can't just look at it as a criticism, but look at what we can take from that and maybe improve in certain areas. I think it warrants some improvement. And for example, I know our group are made of, not all of us have the same experience about housing and stuff like that. That's maybe, it could be a weakness for a commission, but like you said, we represent the community, so I think we bring different perspective, different experience, and for that alone, it's important to have a commission like this to be more diverse. But we just need to look at how we can take from what the recommendations are, see where we can improve, and what we think we don't need improvement, we stay the course. But yeah, I think we should look at both ways.
I just find it interesting that out of the three things they want the overall committee to discuss, that's one of their three top pressing concerns. I just find it odd.
Well, I think I have a unique perspective, and I've been on the other side of this, and you know, so I do want to speak. First of all, from the last time I visited on that side of the table, HCDC, I only recognized a couple of commissioners. You know, it's changed a lot, and I think I was told that the turnover of this group is pretty high. So on the issue of staff recommendations, I do want to know what staff is recommending. You know, I expect that staff would, you know, if I disagree with it and I say, I appreciate getting this input, but I want to make a decision that's different from what staff recommends. But I do want that expertise. So I do want to see what staff is recommending. And
Which
then,
we do get.
And then as my responsibility on this commission, you know, I'll vote, you know, accordingly with it. But I do think that one of the toughest things to do is be consistent with a group. You know, a lot of people, you know, that are on commissions that are really making decisions about funding. It's not something you do a lot. It's not something I've done a lot. And the process over the years, I know in the aid to agencies has changed quite a bit. I don't think 1 year in the 13 years I was here has been consistently the same. It's changed a lot. And there were always surprises coming forward for the agencies that, you know, we had to meet, whether we were a high priority agency, we were ranked. That's the infamous meeting I'll talk about. High priority, you did priority ranking on the scoring. You know, everybody has a rank in terms of priority of service, and this commission decided to start from the bottom up. That was a total shock and a surprise to the agency. So I think we have to have some consistency. I don't think it's okay for this group for the agencies or the groups that are applying for the money to be totally surprised by a decision that's made by this group come the time that we're scoring the applications, because they have no time to react to that. So whatever we can do, I have not gone on this side of the table, gone through this process, and so I'm hoping to have some things, you know, in the next couple of months to say, you know what, I think we could do this a little bit better, easier here. I don't have anything right now, except that I'm going to be that, I will be that loud voice to make sure that we're following the rules that we've set forth and that we put forth in that process for anybody who's applying for money, to make sure that we're not changing the rules at the 11th hour for them. So I think those are my couple of things that I wanted to say.
Yeah, I'll speak mostly in support of what Becky just said. In particular, you know, we've had a couple of years where we've had to make on the fly a decision as to whether we were going to sort of prorate extra funds or sort of top off some of the top scorers or go bottom up. And this is the second bullet under number 2 on the recommendations. And I mean, I think that's a good recommendation. We have had to sort of make that decision on the fly before, and I think it was my first year on the commission, and I didn't really feel any strong basis for how to make that decision. And so that bullet point, I think, would probably help us do something like that, and it would eliminate one particular source of surprise and inconsistency.
Brianna, are scoring matrices / rubrics included with the application so they know?
It's in the applicant guide.
So then the other point here about the staff scores, I find staff scores very, very valuable as a source of information. I mean, every time I've gotten them, I felt good about them, but I think that ultimately I do very strongly believe we should send one score to the council, and it should be the score that we vote on.
Yeah.
I don't think a separate staff score should go to the council. It's an important source of our discussion. It helps us make a decision, but you know, ultimately it is HCDC's role to make these funding recommendations, and so having a separate score there doesn't really make sense, and kind of changes the purpose of the commission.
In regard to the third, most of the affordable housing distribution model, I mean, personally, I would love to see, we've been talking about the security deposit assistance and risk mitigation fund in the city for I don't know how long. I mean, I remember sitting in 2002 on the Greater Iowa City Apartment Association board and sitting with I can't think of his name, the city housing inspector at the time, the city manager at the time and having the same discussion about it would be nice to have something like this for risk mitigation for landlords to get double deposits and stuff. It just never has developed. I think it's important. I think it pushes those landlords who are on the fence for doing affordable housing if they know that if there are problems at the back end of a residency or a tenancy, that the city's there to back them up to make sure that they can keep providing that affordable housing. But other than that, I mean, I think that's an important discussion item for you guys to have, without a doubt. I mean, the entire distribution model as a whole is, you know, getting into that 0 to 30, 30, 60, 80 AMI stuff, you know, whether the city should still continue. I mean, sometimes it seems like we use fair market rent as our guideline, our guidepost for some things, and then sometimes we just use the AMI guidepost for other things. It would be nice to see a unified structure for all decisions made. You know, I mean, I could support 1 and 3 wholeheartedly. I can support section 2, kind of where Becky's coming from, which is, I mean, but like you said, like Matt said, there's just a point where if you just want scores from staff, then just get scores from staff. You're not asking for community involvement at that point. So, and I have only gone through 1, so I felt like that one went pretty well. We only had like 4 applicants, so it wasn't real tough, but.
I definitely think that in looking at some of the potential suggestions of how decision making gets done, that these are things we should discuss, you know, and make some decisions on. The e.g. full funding to top rated applications, or applications will be prorated, partial funding to applicants based on scores. I think that's fair for the agencies to have an expectation of how that's going to work. Because I think one of the things that I know that's been a constant struggle.
Consistently. Here.
Yeah, and one of the things that's been a constant struggle is actually, I've heard from agencies where it was like we're trying to, and it depends on the dynamic of who's on the commission at that time and where the discussion goes, that yes, at points it had been, rather than fully fund the top applicants, it was like, well, we really want to fund more agencies, and so it was spread thinner, which, you know, you end up satisfying none, right, or few. But I think that also, over the course of discussion as commissioners, we were thinking, well, how are we being fair? And this is within the moment. And of course, it's understandable because we're talking about it. But yes, for the applicants, that is not clear. And it does feel like being blindsided in the moment when you're trying to sit and listen to your budget for the next years. So I think that is something that would be helpful for us to iron out so that they do have that transparency. And there may well be, based on your experience too, more specifics that aren't counted here. These are 4 examples, obviously. There may be more or different ones that we can come to consensus on, perhaps in conjunction, in conversation with agencies about what would be most helpful. I mean, obviously every agency wants to have their full funding, right? That, based on what budget we're given, that's not necessarily going to be possible. But can we come to an agreement or a consensus, at least within this commission, that seems fair and appropriate, and that agencies can rely on? Okay, there might be ins and outs about how the rubric is applied, but ultimately they'll understand what they get. Am I kind of paraphrasing correctly? So I don't mean to repeat. I'm just kind of processing out loud, but I think that it came from being able to look at those details about the types of ways that agencies can understand how they'll get funded. I mean, what the end result for them will be rather than what the process of the discussion is, if that makes sense.
As to the expertise point, I also want to encourage every member of the commission to reach out and chat with me on around the time of funding rounds. If there's anything I might be able to help with along the way, I'm happy to do it. I was certainly a little, a bit lost my first year going through some of that.
So Peter, do you have a good idea of where we're coming from as a committee, as far as taking it back to the steering committee?
Is this the type of thing that we need to?
Or is this something we need to,
I'm
put into
still a little
formal
ambiguous about
language?
Do we need a formal statement here, or are we sort of giving some informal advice to Peter?
I think the steering committee wanted some type of input. Don't you agree, Peter? I don't know if that's if you're comfortable with Peter summarizing. Maybe Peter can summarize what he thought he heard and send that out. And
I could share the minutes too.
share the minutes. Or,
Yeah. I think the summary would be good enough to take it back to.
I mean, if we're looking for a quick summary right now, that if I were to give it, it would appear in the minutes. I feel like as far as these 3 recommendations go, I heard no opposition to or no consternation with the first and third recommendations here, really. Whereas the second one, I feel like there was quite a bit of openness to taking a look and considering staff scores as a part of our decision process, and also quite a bit of openness to the second bullet point under number 2, some of these considerations about full funding versus prorated applications, but I think a lot less support for the idea that staff scores would be completely centered and that we would just vote them up or down. I didn't hear really any support for that idea. Does that seem right?
Yes.
not for the committee, but since we're going to a funding round in September, do you want staff to provide a funding recommendation?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you
I'd
want
like to
us to
see
score it
it.
or just provide a funding recommendation, or do both?
Oh,
I think-
well, I had in mind the scores, but what were you going to say?
I have scores in mind, and I think that, I mean, I know that it's a relatively new introduction or new implementation. I completely appreciate it, and it really helps. So yeah, I would.
Guys, I've only seen it, so it was fine for me last time you did it.
So scores and funding. Okay. Yeah, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've had commissions say no. We're on a citizen commission. We don't want your input. I've had others say yes. Why aren't you providing your input? So throughout the years, I've had either way. So it doesn't matter to us. We just need to know.
How about a yes, please?
I mean, we may completely ignore them. Brianna knows that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible.
Yeah, I think deviation from them is going to be the norm, but
We promise not to
I'd
ignore
like to
what we
see
may
them.
reject.
Yeah.
Right.
We will not be offended.
Right.
okay.
Do we have any other discussion of the recommendations?
Still got to get to Shakespeare, so.
So what did we decide? We're going to respond to this, or we're going to? How are we going to respond to this?
Peter's going to respond for us.
Okay.
I'll get you the minutes, so I don't feel like you have to remember
Okay.
everything. She usually takes about a week, but she's pretty quick.
When does the steering committee meet again?
Is that the September 13th?
September something.
Yeah.
16th, I think, is what
I'm
it
trying to
is.
sit on the
Yeah.
committee.
Maybe I'm being
She hear everything.
right. Maybe I'm being overly fussy, but does it make sense to reach out to the committee and ask, do they want like a formal reaction, or is it okay just to summarize? I mean, just that way, then we're not.
Summary.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's something like that.
That was what I heard the request being for, was a more
Yeah.
informal
Okay.
summary rather than a voted
Awesome.
item. So the FY22 mid-year funding round, I believe Brianna and or Tracy have some things to tell us on that.
A bit short and sweet, but in the packet, there's a calendar coming up for the mid-year funding round. So we just finished a round, we're starting another one, and then by the time we get done with this, we'll be into FY23. So it's going to be a busy year. But on the next meeting, we're going to have, well, applications opened up and they're available until the 31st. So the press release went out, and I also emailed them out to some recipients that we've worked with in the past. So at our next meeting, I'll try to get the application packets and the summary of each application out to you before that meeting as soon as I can, so that you can be informed, because at the next meeting we'll bring applicants in and do a question and answer session. And yeah, the calendar is available online. I also put the score criteria in the packet, but it's also available online. And I did just want to offer, we've been doing onboarding sessions with new commissioners, but if anyone has questions or you want to meet one-on-one and ask questions privately, I'm more than happy to set up time to sit down and look at things. So please feel free to ask questions. And Tracy, you always have something good that you say about when we're in an application round about, is it there like not contacting?
Oh,
Yeah, you always say better than I do.
we always ask that when you're in an open funding round, that if, let's say, Tracy's housing nonprofit, I apply, that you don't talk directly to them while you're in funding. When you're in an actual funding round, that conversation remains within this commission. Now, when you're outside of funding round, you can talk to whoever, but we try to keep those conversations. And then if you do have those conversations, like someone hits you up at the grocery store, to disclose that to the group, should an applicant reach you. And I always remind everybody that as a commission member, you can't accept more than $2.99 from anybody.
Is that the actual amount? Is that the actual amount?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
I'm not making that up. That's Iowa law.
So the dollar menu is still game.
Yeah, yes.
One item.
You get
Maybe
one
two.
cookie.
French fries.
Small cup of
McDonald's.
coffee, I guess, right? Yeah.
French fries
Not
at
at
McDonald's.
As a conference in Florida, they basically, I said, well, no, I can't accept that. And they're like, well, what is it? Theirs was like $50. I'm like,
Oh my gosh.
ours is $2.99.
That's all I got though on that. Just reach out with questions. I'm happy to help. I know it's hard the first year, but we're going through it several times this year, so plenty of practice.
Practice.
Actually, it's probably good for new commission members. You're going to have a very, not a very small, but just a housing round. And that will help because then you'll get that and then you'll be going through it again in January. So,
Is there an online portal that we use for this, or in terms of reviewing the applications and scoring, or do we just come up with our own system?
People apply online and we'll get the PDFs and send it to you with any attachments that they have. We didn't do it the last round, but I think Tracy used to do this where we'll just do a one page cover sheet that kind of summarizes any major staff comments that we would have, eligibility, not eligible, that kind of thing. And then we'll get you an Excel sheet or a Word document and you can put your scores into that. It's
Okay,
kind of whatever's
cool.
comfortable for you.
Okay.
And then at the meeting after our Q&A, I think we could probably fire up that projector and I should be able to plug my computer in and we can look at scores as a group and see how things average out.
So you will be going through them and making sure that we understand if an application's come in and it's not eligible for funding at all. So we don't even have to review it.
Nope.
See, that's why you want staff input, you know? Yeah.
Yeah, we had a lot of those.
Yeah.
That was an unusual first round.
Yeah.
It was a tough batch, so.
There was a lot of stuff in that folder online, and then like a week later, nothing was in that folder. I'm like, oh, DVIP was out. DVIP, like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, we're good. Fine.
Yeah, I think everyone was fully funded, so.
Yeah.
Made it
It
easy.
ended up being like, what, three entities all together?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
So our next item, the Iowa City Council meeting updates, to give our new commissioners a brief introduction to this. Basically, every meeting, two commissioners monitor a couple of city council meetings to see if any housing and community relevant issues came up, and then they provide a summary at the next meeting. Though one downside of there being a bit of a gap between the last meeting and a bit of turnover, I have no idea who was assigned last time, and if anyone has prepared a city council meeting update, they should say so I can call on them.
When are the next couple of meetings?
I don't have a calendar.
We only met
Are they on
once
the
in
first
August.
and the third?
It's the first, September goes back to first and third Tuesdays of the month.
So that would be the 7th and the 1st and
Some
and
geeks
the 21st.
actually have it in their calendar, so.
So I feel like the answer here is that no one was assigned.
I
no
think-
one remembers that they were assigned.
I believe we didn't assign anybody at that
I don't
last
think we
meeting.
did
We
either.
kind of had the discussion, but it was summer and Maria was leaving and everybody, I just
Yeah,
don't think
You
we
can
used
always
it.
go back and watch them, in reverse if you, I mean, I'm happy to do that. If I
Or you can go back and watch them normal
I mean,
and forward just
If
from
you think
that.
there's something that we need to do, I mean, I can do.
I mean, I think in the past,
Watching in reverse. would
I've
be
actually
weird.
been to the last two, and as far as ones that had to do with affordable housing, I don't think that there was anything particularly relevant. I mean, they were very interesting meetings, but
Right,
not
yeah.
related to housing. So there's your August.
Or at least not affordable housing, just
Okay.
Right,
17-story
right,
housing.
right.
Would,
So-
would anyone like to take it on for the, between now and the next meeting?
Which would be,
Which would be the,
I think there is one more meeting this month.
On
yeah,
the
I can't do
31st.
anything this month.
I could do the
Trying to figure out
31st.
this. We just passed a meeting, didn't we? 2
Yeah.
days ago?
Yes.
So there
So-
isn't another meeting.
So there
I think
isn't
there's only
one?
one in August, wasn't
Mm-mm.
there?
Hmm.
Because we were, is that right?
See, that's what I get confused.
One meeting in August.
Because they changed.
There's
We
only
got
one
off,
so
yeah.
we're
So,
good
so
for
we
August.
basically just be talking about one council meeting in September. Does anyone want to take it?
When is it?
September 7th?
And there's no obligation here to attend in person. You can view summary.
Green grants.
It's basically the, especially if you're new. I mean, the basic idea is to either watch the meeting or check through the notes for housing relevant issues. If there really aren't any relevant issues, then the summary is as brief as the one Negan just gave, which is that there wasn't anything where
Matt, I'll do September 7th.
we got Kyle then. for
Yeah, I'll do it.
September.
I've got that night is open and, yeah.
All right. And item 11, housing and community development information. Brianna and or Tracy may have something for us there.
I just have a few things. So September 16th, it's going to be busy in the next few months, so bear with us. It's public meeting and approval for the CAPER. The CAPER is the report that summarizes everything we did in the last year. So that will be available at that point. Public comment period for that will start September 1st, and that gets submitted to HUD at the end of the month. We'll do the Q&A with CDBG and home applicants. That typically takes a good chunk of the meeting. Lindy resigned her seat, and we just heard yesterday that Marianne Dennis was appointed. So if you don't know Marianne, she worked formerly with the Housing Fellowship and has a ton of housing experience. So that'll be really exciting to
That's
have
really
her
cool.
have her experience. And then just my last note, there's an eviction prevention help desk available at the Johnson County Courthouse Monday afternoons from 12:30 to 3. Those are all my updates. Anything? No? Short and sweet.
When did you, Mondays from when to when?
Mondays, 12:30 to 3, and there's a flyer on our website. If you go to the press release section, I think that came out within the last couple weeks.
The city did allocate $41,000 to Iowa Legal Aid and Shelter House. Shelter House will be administering it. It's to try to entice, so if somebody's getting evicted or will be getting evicted, that they can basically say, here's 1 month's rent. We will pay your upcoming month's rent if you will take the time to apply for the state's assistance for back rent, so that we try to keep people housed and not evicted. So Iowa Legal Aid and Shelter House is set up on Monday afternoons at the Johnson County Courthouse just to assist people. And I know they pushed back the eviction moratorium, but Chris,
Yeah,
people are coming.
kind of.
Or people are coming.
Oh, yeah, everyone does.
Yeah.
And the only people who have been evicted have been the folks that just haven't shown up. So we've been really successful and haven't had to spend any money.
Great.
We've just been deliberating with the landlords and working with them.
And the city did send the information about those two programs. We sent an email to over 1,300 landlords through our, we don't like doing this because we don't want to flood landlords and property managers' email for notice, but we thought it was important to get that information out so landlords can start talking with their tenants about how they can get that back rent and not evict.
It's been really successful.
Great. It's good to hear.
Just have it come from Stan with no message, just a clickable they have to open up, because everybody will look at that. Just important information about your property from the city. Yeah. And
we are all out of agenda. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.